Hi guys, I'm Sagar. In this video, I'm going to explain you about solid design principles and their sample implementations using Java. Okay. So apart from solid design principles, if you are looking to gain good familiarity with Java, you can find my full course on Java programming language. Okay. So find the link in the below description. Also take a look at my full course on multi-threading. So if interested, it's really important for interviews as well. Okay. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Okay, so for more and more technology videos. So don't want to waste your time. Let's jump into and understand what are solid design principles. Okay, so let's get started with solid principles. Okay, solid is an acronym for the first five object oriented design principles by Robert C. Martin, also called as Uncle Bob. So they are not design patterns or anything of that sort. So they simply say that these are the principles to follow for effective object oriented design. Okay. And out of that, the first one is single responsibility principle. S for single responsibility principle. So single means here a class should be given only one responsibility at a time. So a class should only have one reason to change. So what do you mean by that? Now let us see that with a very simple dummy example. I will not be taking too many classes and too many different things. So it's a simple one. Okay. Let's start off with some class called account service. Now I'm not taking account pozo, some account class and all those things and passing arguments and other stuff. So let's keep it simple, guys. Okay. Say for example, there is a function called open account, and this might take some account object and all the other stuff, but I'm avoiding this for now. Okay. So let it be simple. Now, what is that you might do when you open an account? Println some fill account details, internal details. So maybe you will give name and balance and other stuff, but there may be something like account opening date and all the other stuff, right? So let's say we are going to fill those internal details, okay? And then store account object in DB database. So storing this account information in the database, and this may be optional or it may be depends on case. Send out welcome message, some notification to either the mobile number or email, etc., etc. stuff. Okay. Now, if you take a look at this class is actually handling three responsibilities. One, filling the account internal details, and two, storing that account in database, and three, sending out notifications. This is what the first responsibility says. This should be avoided. So, a class should be given only one responsibility at a time. Now, it doesn't mean that all three should be in a different class. Storing the content in database might be a completely different job. Okay. So, because this may change as well. So, you may be storing it a database, and again, what sort of database comes into picture? Based on that, your queries will change, your insertion logic will change, and all those things will change. So, bringing that entire stuff into account service is not a good idea. And at the same time, sending out notifications, welcome message. So it again may change, may depend on several other factors. You may be sending out an email, you may be sending out a push notification to a mobile. So it could be anything. Now, bringing that intelligence into account service is again quite too much as far as account service is concerned. So don't bring too much intelligence. So it should be at a time, it should be only one. So it should be dealing with one responsibility at a time. So what should I do? How do I change this? So what I will do, I'll have something called as account repository. Now this is responsible for creating the account. Say there is some function called create, which creates the account. So it also takes account object and what account object to create. So which I'm avoiding it for now. Now here what I will do, I will take out this responsibility. Now let the account repository deal with the headache of storing the data in the database. Okay. So let us move that intelligence to account repo. And at the same time, I'm going to write something called as notification service, which is responsible for sending out notifications. Okay, and let's put this third stuff into this one. Now account service is having one responsibility. Now repository is dealing with completely different logic. Notification service is dealing with completely different logic. Now account service, opening an account requires all three jobs to be done. So account service need these other classes as dependencies. Okay, and take the notification service as a dependency. Okay, so this is what I will do for now. So let's say notification service and repository equal to new repository. Now let the account service delegate the storage to repository. So repository.create will actually create the account in database. Okay, and notification service dot send notification will send out the notification. Okay, now you see account service is actually doing all three tasks, but its primary responsibility is to fill the details and delegate the stuff to the rest of the components. Okay, now it's account repository's headache to completely deal with the database. It's the notification service headache to completely deal with sending out the notifications. Okay, so this is how you assign one single responsibility to the component, and this is what is stated by the single responsibility principle. Okay, so let's create an object just for sake of sample and say service dot open account. Okay, now all three tasks are done, but the responsibilities are now segregated between the components. So you have account service, account repo, and notification service. Hope that you got the point. Let's see the other principles. Okay, so see you in the next lecture. So here you go. So this is our second principle, open closed principle. So objects or entities should be open for extension, closed for modification. So what do you mean by this? A class should be open for extension. So and it should be closed for modification. It's like saying the same sentence, right? So no, that's very simple. Let's see that in an example first. Okay. So I'm going to take a simple class called arrayutil. Okay. And I will write a function called sort, which takes an integer array and sorts it. Okay. Now to call this one, what I would do, I'll also make it static so that I don't need an object. Next, I'll have an integer array. So this should return, no, because it's called by reference, I don't need to return anything. So say 1. Okay, so that's fine. So what I do is I'll say arrayutil dot sort and the given array. Okay, so ARR. And then I'll say print simply values in the array are, and then for each integer element in ARR, simply print it. Okay, so the given element. Okay, good. So let's sort, let's put our very inefficient sort logic. Okay, so I may be taking a selection sort, something of that sort. For int I equal to 0, so I is less than a dot length I plus plus. So efficient sorting is not our goal, guys. So it's only for example's sake. For int j equal to I plus 1, j is less than a dot length j plus plus. Now, if a of I is greater than a of j, now let's not worry about the logic, okay? So you need to swap these two. So temp equal to a of I equal to a of j, and a of j equal to temp. Okay, fine. Let's see if this logic works. Okay, so I'm going to print this, run and see. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks good. So let's now begin the questions. Okay, now if somebody comes and says, you please sort in the descending order. Okay, now you might do introduce some other field which says which is ascending or descending, and then you will apply the logic accordingly. So or else what you might do is sort descending. Okay, and then instead of greater than I may put less than. Now if somebody calls a sort descending, it should work in the descending order. Okay, so ascending in descending is also fine, so to some extent, but going forward, if these are not integers, these are objects, and say for example, like what we discussed in the previous case, say for example, these are the list of accounts or list of student marks. Somebody comes and say, please sort by student number, a roll number, or somebody comes and say, so sort by name and sort by score, final score, total score. So if you keep on adding the cases, you keep on adding the functions, and that is not a good idea. So we want to avoid these kind of things. Okay, so this is integer array is a very simple example for you to understand. So that's the reason I took it. I don't want to take the complicated examples immediately now. Okay, so how are we going to make this slightly more flexible? Okay, so that is something that we need to think about. Now what I will do, I will simply say introduce some interface called value comparator. And what this particular comparator should do is something like this. So it should return an integer for me and compare int value 1 and int value 2. So you take two integer values, you compare them and return positive result. So this is your goal. So you return positive. Let's not remove this. Return positive if value 1 is greater than value 2. Negative if value 1 is less than value 2. Something. And 0 if value 1 is equal to value 2. Okay, now what we can do is we can ask somebody who is calling the sort method to provide the comparator. So we can say value comparator. So we will take an implementation of an object which performs the comparison. So we don't do comparison here. We will simply ask the comparator to do the comparison. So instead of making a direct comparison, so I will say whatever is the comparator given. So compare the value 1, a of I, with a of j. Okay. So if it is greater than 0, so if you return a positive result, then I will swap. Otherwise, no. So what we did is we are not doing a comparison logic here. So we are asking the comparator, you please implement, whoever is calling the sort, please implement that and then give that comparator so that we can use that to compare. Okay. I think we are good here, right? Now somebody who is making a call need to implement the comparator and give it to us. So what can I do? I cannot make a simple call to sort. I will say, I'll write it here. I'll say class ascending order comparator implements value comparator. My goal is sorting the elements in ascending order. So what I do, I will simply implement the comparator logic and I will say value 1 minus value 2. Okay, that's it. So this is my comparator. So if somebody wants descending order, they will simply say descending comparator. So they will use value 2 minus value 1. Okay. Now let's see what they can do. So they can simply create, while sorting, they can say new ascending order comparator. Now they get ascending order. Now let's run and see. Okay. So now they got ascending order. Now if they say descending order comparator, if they use this comparator, so you got the descending order. So this is very simple. So you don't need to modify your algorithm just for the sake of new functionality. So your algorithm will be intact. So this is what we call open for extension but closed for modification. So closed for modification. So this particular class, you don't need to modify this class. You can simply go ahead and say this is final. Okay, so you cannot even override. You don't need to modify this class functionality. Now this class is open for extension. It exposed an interface. It asked you, please go ahead and implement this comparison logic and give it to me so that I can make use of that comparison logic and perform the other operations. Okay. Do you remember the template method design pattern that I have explained in the previous sections? It's almost like that. Okay. So here the only difference is we opened an interface. So we took an array and we opened an interface. Let the caller who is making a call decide on what sort of comparison that they want to do and then give it so that they can make use of their comparator and we will simply use it to sort. This is because it is now closed for modification but open for extension. Now this is called as open closed principle, guys. So it is very simple. I took a very simple example. I just wanted to write a simple integer comparison. Okay. Okay. So let's see. You see this particular function, guys. So go to the implementation of it. You can click on the command option in case of Mac or control button in case of Windows. So you go to the sort method, see what is there here. So this is generics. So this you will come to know once you cross the generics concept. So this it is easy, and then they are asking you to implement the comparator. So if you provide your own comparison logic, so you can provide it, and now you can see this also looks similar to what we did just now. Okay, so this is just a reference for you. Now you can actually find there is a class called arrays which performs all sort of sorting techniques and other stuff which is already available, so which is available in Java util arrays. So you can see that you already have all the sort logic, and this line, so we are trying to explain. So if you supply it array and you supply the comparator, then they will use this comparator to compare and then sort the array. Okay, so it's almost in line with what we built but with generics, and they will be using some efficient sorting techniques. Okay, so this is for your reference, guys. So it is open for extension, closed for modification, nothing but this one. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now let's see what is Liskow's substitution principle. So it is very easy actually. So what the principle states is objects of superclass shall be replaced with objects of subclasses. Okay, what do you mean by that? It's much easier, guys. Say for example, there is a class called vehicle which has something called as start and stop. Okay, so I'll just leave it. Okay, start and stop. I'll say starting a vehicle and then stop. Okay, now so there is a class called bike which extends vehicle and start and stop. They simply say starting a bike, okay, and stopping a bike. That's fine. And somebody says, say for example, there is a car, again a vehicle, starting a car and stopping a car. Okay, so this looks good. Now there is a class or there is a function called test drive a vehicle. Okay, test drive a vehicle, and they will say vehicle dot start and vehicle dot stop. Okay, so this particular class code is applicable for what? All vehicles, right? So you should be able to substitute the subclasses as well. So I can create an object for vehicle for test drive, and I can also use a bike for test drive. I can also use a car for test drive. Okay, so because it's a base class, it is substitutable. So you can substitute any derived class object in place of base class. So this is perfect and it works fine. Okay, so it works like a charm. Come on, let's see. It worked, right? So starting a vehicle, starting the stopping, etc., etc. Okay, this looks good. Now somebody actually went and said, when they say start, so the intended behavior is it doesn't throw any exception. Okay, so though you don't know anything about exceptions, I am simply using it for now. So you will see what is exceptions in the next section, guys. So I'll say runtime exception. Boo. Okay, gone. Now what happens is suddenly your application behaves in a different way. So suddenly you will see exceptions coming in. So this is not what is intended. Okay, that's the point of Liskow's substitution principle. Okay, you should be able to replace the base class objects with the subclass objects. That's it, and the code should work fine. Okay, so something unintended behavior should not pop in. So you should not be designing any code which breaks the existing functionality. That's it. Okay, simple, right? So this is what is not intended. You simply, if you put this, as far as it doesn't break any existing logic, it it is good. Okay, so whenever there is an expectation of a base class type object, you should be able to supply the subclass instances. So that's your third principle, guys. Liskov substitution principle. Okay, very simple. That's it. See you in the next lecture. So next one, interface segregation principle. A client should never be forced to implement an interface that it doesn't use. Okay, so what do you mean by that? See, even simple, guys. So say for example we have something called as restraint. So I'll say veg meals. Okay, I'll say non-veg meals. Okay, so if something I say, for example, class called veg restaurant, ABC veg restaurant implements restaurant. Okay, now it's a veg restaurant and it's implementing a restaurant, so it is forced to implement all the methods. Now it's a veg restaurant, but still because it implements restaurant, so it need to implement both veg meals and non-veg meals. Okay, so I'll say sorry I don't. So do you what has forced you to implement this method? Okay, that's the point that you need to understand. What has forced veg restaurant to implement non-veg meals method? Okay, and that is because you combined restaurant interface and you actually have veg meals and non-veg meals in single interface. Okay, and this combination is wrong. if somebody is a full normal veg and non-veg restaurant, so they can take this interface. But there are certain scenarios where that supports only veg restaurant, so it only supports veg meals. So instead of combining this like this, so what interface segregation principle says is you split the interface into multiple parts so that everybody can implement what they want. So what I will do here is I'll say veg restaurant, okay, and I'll say another interface called non-veg restaurant, and here I'll put non-veg meals. So now ABC veg restaurant can only implement veg restaurant interface, and they don't need this, okay. And say for example some XYZ restaurant, now they want both veg and non-veg inside their hotel, so that's fine. Implements veg restaurant and non-veg restaurant, okay, so that they can do both. So that is how they can implement both the methods, and they can answer all the calls, okay. Now somebody wants only veg, then they can take veg restaurant example. So this is how you can segregate the interfaces so that the classes can implement only those interfaces that they need and leave out the rest of the things. That's what this principle states, guys. So interface segregation principle, a client or the class should never be forced to implement an interface that it does not use. Okay, now I think this statement makes sense, right? Very simple. So that's it. So and we don't need a demo for this one. Okay, so that's it, guys. So this is the interface segregation principle. I hope you understood the point. Okay, see you in the next lecture. Okay, so last but not least, dependency inversion principle. If you already know dependency injections and inversion of control in Spring, so this is not related to that, guys. So that is quite different, and this is different. Okay, so here this particular principle states is high level modules should not directly depend on low level modules. Okay, instead they should depend on abstractions. So what do you mean by that? Again, very simple. Say for example my messenger, okay, and this is at a high level. Let's say this is a application layer, so this is actually sending out messages to notifications to some other guy, some other clients, okay. And there is a class called TCP protocol handler, okay, and say send message, some string message, okay. I'm not going to write TCP etc stuff. So sending message, so TCP protocol handler sending message and this message, okay. Now my messenger requires some TCP handler. So what it can do, it can create an instance of TCP protocol handler, okay, TCP handler, and some send, some client, some message, okay. So it's going to make use of a TCP handler so to send some message. This is at the transport layer, okay. I'm not using this client information and etc stuff. I'm just giving you a simple example, okay. So this is going to send it R2, or let's make it destination R2, and so message, okay. So what I will do, I will make use of TCP handler to send message for so and so guy, okay. Message from, you can leave it, or message to, just put the to here and the actual message, No, just for example's sake. So don't try to look at it from the protocol and others' perspective, right? It's not a full-fledged example. Okay. So this is the application layer, which is responsible for sending out the messages, creating the clients, etc., identifying the clients, etc. Now, this is a low level module. So, this is a TCP protocol handler which actually sends the messages through TCP. Okay. So, this is my message. That's fine. Some A, some solid is easy. Now, this looks good, but this is a high level module and this is a low level module. Okay. Let's call it a high level module, and this I will call it a low level module. Okay, so here high level module is directly depending on low level module. So TCP protocol handler to send the message. Now this is not what is intended. So dependency inversion principle says high level modules should not directly depend on low level modules. Instead, they should depend on abstractions. Okay, let's say there is an interface and void send message. Okay, now this TCP handler can implement protocol handler. And similarly, you can say, so there is another protocol called UDP, user datagram protocol. So UDP handler can implement protocol handler. Okay, so let's say some class called protocol handler factory, and then let's say you have some protocol handler get protocol handler. Okay, string protocol. So if they say if protocol dot equals of or TCP dot equals ignore case of protocol, or I can take the enums as well. So that's also fine. So you return new TCP protocol handler. Okay. Else if this is UDP, now you return UDP protocol handler. Okay. Now this particular class can, instead of depending on TCP handler, it actually depends on protocol handler. Okay. And here, while creating the message protocol, my messenger, okay, with the protocol, I can say handler equal to, okay, protocol handler factory. You go to the protocol handler factory dot get handler for the given protocol. Okay, so it's not static, so let's make it static. Okay, so then this handler dot send message. So there are some other additional things which are included as part of this, but so at a high level, if you look at the my messenger now, okay, still showing some error because we are not returning. Okay, so let's leave it. Okay, so the actual point that I want to cover is, in this case, my messenger is not directly dependent on TCP handler, okay, or it is not directly dependent on UDP handler. It's dependent on this interface. This is an abstraction which says that there is something called as protocol handler which is capable of sending a message. So which protocol handler, the decision can be made based on the actual protocol. So now compare between the previous one and the present one. The high level module is not directly dependent on the low level module. So it's only dependent on the abstraction. Okay. So now this is an example for dependency inversion principle. high level modules should not directly depend on low level modules. Instead, they should depend on abstractions. Okay. So you can actually create an abstraction. You can open an interface saying that these interfaces are implemented by these low level modules. Now, your code, whatever the code that you are building, should bank on the interface rather than actual implementation. So that's the main goal of this dependency inversion principle. Okay, so this is a dummy example, guys, so we can better it, we can always better it. So the intent is to explain you the core concept. Okay, now this gets you, based on the protocol whatever you choose, this gets you the corresponding handler, and based on that you will send the message. So if I say here TCP, okay, now this is a messenger which is using TCP protocol handler. You can clearly see when I run it. So TCP protocol handler is sending out a message. If I switch to UDP, you can see UDP protocol handler is sending the message, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so this is dependency inversion in a nutshell, guys. So at a high level, all the solid principles are pretty simple and straightforward. Now, in order to just have a high level recap, you have S for single responsibility principle. So a class should be given only one responsibility. And then O for open closed principle. So class should be open for extension, closed for modifications. So it can expose certain interfaces so that the users can make their own implementations and use the existing algorithm. Okay, so Liskow's substitution principle, this is for substituting the base class references with subclass objects. And then interface segregation principle, don't merge all the interfaces into single interface, have them separate interfaces, and let the classes implement what they actually need. Okay, like veg and non-veg restaurant, we have seen that example. And dependency inversion principle, it's like high level modules should not directly dependent on low level modules. They should have, there should be some sort of abstractions in between. So like opening up of interfaces, or interface based implementations, or abstract class based implementations, something of that sort. Okay, so don't expose the full implementation directly. So make sure that you expose an interface and let the implementation be separated out. So these are the simple solid principles, guys. So I hope you understood the concepts. If you have any doubts, you can always reach out to me through Q&A. I'll be more than happy to help you. See you in the next lecture.